Imagine being charged with a felony for experiencing a miscarriage at home. This was the shocking reality for Ohio woman Brittany Watts. Brittany's ordeal began when she went to the hospital with severe bleeding. In the stark, sterile environment of the medical facility, she received devastating news. Her fetus was not viable. The life she'd been nurturing was no more. But instead of sympathy, understanding, or support, the hospital staff notified the police about her situation. It's hard to imagine the fear and confusion Brittany must have felt when law enforcement officers responded to her home, her private sanctuary, turned into a crime scene. What was already a distressing personal tragedy was quickly becoming a public nightmare. The initial charge was a felony, specifically abuse of a corpse. The alleged crime, leaving the non-viable fetus at home. It's a charge that seems to echo from a different era, one where women's bodies were policed and their personal tragedies could be twisted into criminal acts. But Brittany wasn't alone in her fight. She had an attorney who argued that the charge was not supported by Ohio law, that Brittany was being demonized for something that commonly happens in the privacy of women's homes. The grand jury listened, and they dismissed the charge. They said there was insufficient evidence for an indictment. Brittany was not going to be criminally charged. In a world where miscarriages are often suffered in silence, this was a significant victory. But the victory was not without its repercussions. The case has become a lightning rod, sparking a fiery debate and raising questions about the prosecution of women when their pregnancies end, either by abortion or miscarriage. This case has sparked a fiery debate, raising questions about the prosecution of women when their pregnancies end, either by abortion or miscarriage. But what does the law say about such situations? Let's delve into the intricacies of Ohio's legal system. Now, Ohio has a law that penalizes the treatment of a human corpse in a way that would violate what the community or a reasonable family considers acceptable. It's a broad law, open to interpretation, and it's this very law that was brought into play against Brittany Watts. A grand jury, however, disagreed with the prosecution's interpretation of the law in this case, stating that Watts had not violated it. This brings us to the argument of Watts's attorney. He contended that there is no explicit law in Ohio requiring a woman who suffers a miscarriage to bury or cremate the remains. This is a significant point as it highlights the absence of clear legal guidelines for such tragic and personal circumstances. It also raises questions about the interpretation and application of existing laws. Had the grand jury decided differently, Watts could have faced a rather harsh penalty. We're talking up to a year in prison and a fine of up to $2,500, all for an event that occurred within the privacy of her own home, a situation that was beyond her control. This case underscores the complexity of law and its interpretation. It's a labyrinth of clauses and conditions that can be navigated differently based on perspective. And in the absence of clear, specific laws pertaining to situations like Watts, the interpretation of existing laws can lead to vastly different outcomes. The law, it seems, is a complex web of interpretations and ambiguities. The case of Brittany Watts is not an isolated incident. It points to a larger, more concerning trend. It's a mirror that reflects the disparity and prejudice that Black women face in healthcare, particularly when it comes to pregnancy. They experience higher rates of pregnancy loss and face greater risks in terms of infant and maternal mortality. The reasons are complex and multifaceted, often rooted in systemic bias and lack of access to quality healthcare. But the Watts case also shines a light on the confusion surrounding definitions of pregnancy loss. These definitions have shifted over time, and this ambiguity has been exploited by those seeking to criminalize miscarriage. Anti-abortion extremists have weaponized these shifting definitions, leading to cases like this one, where a woman's personal tragedy is turned into a public spectacle. This alarming trend of criminalizing miscarriage is not just a legal issue, it's a societal one. It's about how we view and treat women, about the control and autonomy they have over their bodies. The Brittany Watts case serves as a stark reminder of the challenges and prejudices many women face in their private lives.